I wanted to talk about what I've been figuring out about this project and why I think I'm finally beginning to understand a little bit more about what Things Go Sideways is all about. First of all, happy Friday, though. Happy Friday, Tim, Brian, and Joe, who are on here live with me. I think very fondly of all of you. And I'm thankful that you three in particular are here with me live because you are all able to go very deep in a number of different areas and you have a lot of creativity. So I'm glad that you're here with me and thank you for paying attention. So here's what I've been figuring out about Things Go Sideways. Things Go Sideways is about the impasse. It's about, things are going to go wrong for everyone at some point in every aspect of existence. We're going to have change, and that's really what it's about, is this change. But it's a particular kind of change. It's change that has to happen because you've hit this impasse. You've hit this point where there is no proceeding the way that things were. Something must change. This is the catalyst moment where things have gone sideways, and what happens next. When I started the project, I thought very much that I was thinking, should this be about just personal stories, or could it also be businesses? Could it be organizations? What could this be? And I didn't want to limit it necessarily, even though I had some advice maybe to do that, but I didn't want to limit it because I thought I'm interested in all of it, and who's to tell me what to do? So it's my project, I can do it, right? So I have been gathering these stories, and at this point I've recorded 26 interviews, and there are 8 that are scheduled to come up. This is kind of incredible the way I do at least one a week, usually more than that. And they're coming in. So yeah, be ungovernable. I know, because of Brian's great work. Yes, be ungovernable. Yeah, so, it's like I have been really excited about the way that the stories have been coming in. Hi, Reed, nice to see you. And the thing that I'm beginning to notice, and now there have been 10 of these interviews, the recorded interviews that have been released so far. The thing I'm beginning to notice is that there are some themes that are there. First of all, the people who go through a sideways story that don't make a choice, that they kind of roll along and they let life take it where it's going to take them, and they kind of land where they're going to land. These are not the people I'm talking to. This is people who agree to talk to me for these stories are the ones who have actively made a choice. They have, and you would say, like, well, you make a choice by not making a choice. But that's my point, is really it's the people who made a decision on purpose to move in a certain direction. And when they hit that impasse, they actively went through this struggle of, and now what? And I'm fascinated by that moment. I'm fascinated by that moment in all different kinds of ways, because we don't make decisions based on the same types of information that we would at other points in our life. When we are undergoing a shift in identity, or the things that we sort of tether ourselves to, the foundations of our life, like who we are in relation to other people, or who we are in relation to the job or role that we have, we're making decisions in a different kind of way. And sometimes we're deciding that we don't have to make decisions in the way that we did before. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So I'm fascinated by the decision-making aspect of it. I'm also really exploring what this means for communication, because one of the themes that has been coming up in these interviews has been how people have communicated with others about the change that they're going through and the relationships, how those have shifted as a result. No surprise, clarity is kindness. When we are able to be clearer about who it is we're deciding to be and what path we're deciding to take, then it makes it easier for other people to engage with us. But what about those times when we're in the thick of it, when we haven't made that decision yet? That's hard, right? That changes the way that we can. How can we communicate when we're in the middle of change? You know, we want to be clear, we want to be kind to others and ourselves, but it's really hard when we haven't made that decision. So those are some of the things, some of the like discoveries and questions that I've been exploring, and I am continuing to explore. I'm also taking these deeper in a couple of different paths. Really quick before I move on to the next thing that I wanted to bring up for this live, which if you have any questions or if you have any feedback, tell me what you're thinking about Things Go Sideways so far. If you've listened to any episodes, if there's, you know, the Substack stuff, are the articles hitting, like what's helpful for you? I'm very curious on your take on it. But okay, so the other thing is I need to add some diversity to the people I'm interviewing. I was thinking about putting up like a, getting headshots for everybody and putting up here's the first 10 interviews that have been done, first 10 podcasts, and what they're about. And I realized that we have different neurodivergent people represented. We have different nationalities represented. We have different we have LGBTQ plus is represented. We have men, we have women, we have people from different income brackets. We have different ages represented. But I realized that as far as looking at pictures, when you look at the picture, I don't have a lot of diversity, people who have darker skin complexions than I do. And that really bothers me. So, once I realized that earlier this week, I thought, I'm going to go out of my way to try to bring in people. I've talked with people about being on the show, but I hadn't actually done it. And so now I want to be a little bit more purposeful about it, just so I can make sure that there's representation that's fair, that, someone can't use that as an argument from the outside and say that I'm not actively going after listening to everyone's sideways stories, because we have things to learn from everyone. So we're always learning, right? Okay, so this morning I wake up and come downstairs, and every single morning, most mornings I'll say, but every morning that I'm home and I'm doing my normal thing, I have a routine. I sit down in the library downstairs and I write sort of a diary entry, how I slept, any dreams I had, what's on my mind. Sometimes it's like remembering something, whatever. I typically don't look at my phone because I don't want it to get my attention first thing. That said, sometimes, I do. Sometimes it draws me in. This morning it did, because I was curious about the Substack Live that I'm doing right now. And I was thinking, okay, I've been looking into Substack and the strategy and how to grow the audience and everything. By the way, I haven't really applied any of this yet, but I'm just, studying it a little bit. And it was talking about its different features and the importance of the notes feature. So I went in and opened it up just to look, it's supposed to be a moment. And I ended up down a rabbit hole where I actually, came across Tamsin Webster, who, if you're familiar with her, her work. She's an author, thought leader. She's someone who writes about communication, and she's sort of a thought leader's thought leader in how you put your ideas together and present them better. So kind of intimidating. I interviewed her years ago for Association Chat. I think she has something like 14,000 subscribers or something on Substack already, and she only really started posting in earnest on April 1st, and she's doing all the right things. So this is a person who studied, figured it out. Definitely not someone like myself who is figuring it out in the moment as she's going. She studied the bridge before she began to craft it, right? And so she is doing an amazing job, and she was sharing some information about talking about the things she's learning. She's putting together a doctoral thesis all about aha moments, basically, and looking at the way that aha moments kind of come together, and what causes, as a result of these aha moments, what creates real change, change that sticks versus change in the moment. Because anybody can be sort of like, wow, I'm a new person. But when they wake up the next day or in a week from then, like, what really sticks? So she's been studying this, and she came across some information. Renee Lertzman had shared some research. Renee Lertzman focuses on change and motivation with a keen eye toward climate change. Why haven't we done now? If it were about information, we'd already have made the changes that we should. Why has all of this information sharing, fact sharing, tugging on the heartstrings, why has it not worked? What is it that actually compels people, motivates people to change? Lertzman's argument is that even the problem lies within the language we use to talk about it, that motivation, as an example, as a word that we use in what we're trying to do for folks to affect the change that we need to make, that it's ineffective. It's less powerful, at least, than other ways that we can go about affecting change. And what I realized is that that insight that happens after the impasse, that aha moment that Tamsin Webster is studying, and the work that Renee Lertzman is doing. And, this is taking me down this whole interesting little, see the rabbit holes we can go down. I found it really fascinating because I began to think about the studying that I've been doing about trust and about how people make decisions during times of uncertainty and disruption in a different way than they do during other times. When things are particularly disruptive, our brains, we don't make decisions the way that we typically would. And it made me realize that there's something about the way that we communicate to others, and something in the work that these people are doing, that we're all trying to kind of go about it from different angles. But I'm really fascinated by how people take those moments where they hit that impasse and make a choice. I see it as, it really is the opportunity that is in the middle of a moment that could really make somebody crash and burn. It could, it's like this moment that is really the phoenix rising from the ashes, or it could be, but it isn't always. And so many people rush through that. So that's the part I'm really interested in, is for the people who figure out the next steps. How did they make that decision? What were they grappling with? What went through their heads? Was this something that was latent and dormant that came alive at that moment? Or was this something else? how did they make that decision on that very next step? Because I guarantee that when you've hit that point, almost 100%, it's not your next move is not because somebody is coming and giving you facts. It's because you're figuring out, you understand inherently how important it is. You're figuring out how to make these who you're going to be. So anyway, that's where I am. That's what's going on. And I think it's going to impact not just the interviews that I do moving forward, that I'm loving and I'm learning from and everything, but I think it's going to impact the communications work that I do, for the consulting or the speaking that I'm doing, that is talking about how to communicate. I focus so much on trust and clarity, but there's more than that. There's something about the psychology in us and the way that we both send messages out during times that are difficult or about issues that are difficult, and also how we receive them, and taking into account the psychology of where people are when they're going through something where the bedrock of reality, of how they see the rules of society around them, of technology, the technology that's being used or even impacting the workforce, the rules about how they receive funding, or how the supply chain is impacted. When we have stressors on about every segment of risk that a person can have, we're not going to be receiving messages the same. We're not going to be as effective in communicating the same if we don't begin to address the truth of what's happening underneath all of it. And so, anybody still with me? Have I lost anybody yet? Anybody interested in this? So that's kind of an update on where I am in my thinking lately. I think that, as always, I'm fascinated by this idea of how do we communicate our relationship with trust, and how we're able to do that at a time when AI is driving so much. Hey, Kathy. Hey, yay. Tim, hi. I'm so glad, Tim, you're still here. Yay. I wish we were sitting around a table right now and having this discussion. And maybe that too can be something that we do in the future. I think it would be amazing. But that's what I've learned. And I've already talked for longer than I really expected to. Thanks for letting me ramble this morning. But that's where I am with what the project's all about. The way that things are developing, I mean, what I'm working on, and the way that first of all, a lot of questions come in about, how are you, is this your thing, KiKi, or are you still consulting, or what are you doing? It's a really good question. I'm in the middle of figuring out who I am next too. Here's what I know for sure. Things go sideways, I'm 100% invested in. I'm passionate about it. It's become a new fixation that I don't see going away, maybe ever. And my last fixation was association chat in different sorts of forms. I didn't understand what I was doing with it. It kind of, it kind of evolved accidentally. And but I do understand this on purpose from the beginning, of what I'm really sort of how enamored I am of what I'm doing here. And so I'm really fixated on this moment of people hitting their sideways moments, and also organizations hitting sideways moments. What is it that creates them? What happens when you can't move forward? And how do you make those decisions on what happens next? There's so many different ways, approaches that different people make. And the whole point of me studying this and collecting this is not to create some sort of here's the 3-step answer for what you're supposed to do next. My whole interest in this is the reorientation of figuring out, who am I now? You have to have that awareness before you move forward, right? So I'm really interested in that, rather than prescribing something. I don't think that there is a prescription for everyone. I think if there is a prescription, it would be that, understanding who you are is not who you used to be. Who am I now? Assessment. What is this organization now? Tim says, yes, we went through some things here, and how we invited friends into the conversation changed the whole friend group for the better. I love that. I'm really exploring my relationship to community right now a lot. In fact, I'm really working hard on that. It's not, let me say this. How do I say this? I know a lot about cultivating a community. I'm not particularly good. No, I won't even say that. So far, I have not been particularly skilled in that, and actually pretty poor at creating a support or circle for myself personally. I kind of have held things at arm's length for a lot of my life, and really have a very sort of limited approach to that. So who's my board of directors for? I interviewed someone, Stan Gibson, earlier this week, and he had this really great thing that he does. He has a board of directors where it's people who are you think are just outside of your grasp. Like they likely wouldn't want to give, would they really give me 30 minutes of their time? Those people that are where you want to be being part of your board of directors. So there's that circle, which I'm just lousy at like doing that. And then there's also that closer circle of these people support me no matter what, right? They're the people that will tell me the truth, but also will gather around me, and they're like, yeah, and different circle. Okay, sorry, rabbit hole, went down that one. Let me look at, see, Joe, you said the raw stories are great because they reveal vulnerability in all of us. What would be interesting is to invite psychologists or others on to offer perspectives on how certain personality types approach sideways moments. I agree. And in some of there are a couple interviews I've done that are heading in that direction. They haven't posted yet, but they have been recorded. And I 100% agree. And I totally see where things go sideways should have that built into it. I think that this is all of us learning about this type of stuff. How do these personalities and emotions impact decision making? Yeah. And maybe even invite others around the person to be present with them in some way in the story. Yeah. Tim, I love that. I think what I'm grappling with on that, and yeah, Tim, we definitely should. We should catch up. It's been a long time. I think that what I'm grappling with on that front, with inviting somebody to be a part of the discussion, is that when you're talking about, there are a few things. One is, even though it's not live, when I'm recording, right? I'm recording, it gets edited. It's different than the live stream stuff I used to do. I definitely think, and the thing could be edited later, but I want to protect the person who I'm talking to, who has made choices. A lot of times when I'm talking to people, no, all the time so far, when I've been talking to people, these are people who recognize that they have faced a sideways moment and they have already made some choices. They might still be in the midst of making choices, like me, right? About what happens next. But they they've grappled with a lot of the questions about who am I now? Who do I want to be? And I think that, it would be really interesting to have those conversations. It has to be like the right kind of psychologist or the right kind of person, who my fear would be that even if they might have all of this great knowledge, in the moment, we're human, right? In the moment when talking with people who have actually answered these questions for themselves, I would never want to accidentally, unintentionally put doubt in anyone's mind, because how when you're freshly making that decision, and that maybe it's because I'm going through it right now. When you're in the middle of making that decision and you're like, really, is this really the next thing? It's fresh and it's raw, and either you're defensive of making the decision on this next step. You definitely are not necessarily wanting people to poke holes in it yet. And heaven help us if there is enough doubt that it sways you off course, right? And so I think that that's probably my gut reaction to it, because I am in the middle of my own sideways journey. Tim says, the most powerful part of our journey was learning what others were thinking about what we were going through. Interesting. There was so much compassion and support that we didn't know how to reach out for. Not every story, but there might be a few good ones. It was wonderfully. Yeah. I agree. And there's something there. I mean, there's something in the workshopping it, right? Or like talking about it, that if everyone feels safe about it, and if they come through on the other side, that's something that other people can learn from. And I think that there's so much value in that. I think we're so fearful of trying on ideas and being wrong, or not having the whole thing like perfectly figured out. And at least I am, I'm afraid, but I also won't stop picking at it. I know that this is important, and I know that it deserves to be examined a little bit more. And I think that some of the most amazing things come as a result of it. I know that because of these stories, right? We all know that the best part of the story is always when there's that point where it's like we're all just going along, and then in the story, in the arc of the narrative, right, there's what has to happen. Conflict has to happen. And not just once, by the way. You think you've solved it, but then there's a hiccup or there's something else. And every good story has it. It's different when we're watching it, when we're reading it, than when we're listening to it, than when we're experiencing it, where we're like, oh my God, I don't want to go through this right now. I'm comfortable. I've figured out something in my life and I feel good. I don't want something to change. Like that was where I was. And I can tell you almost like, if you ever find yourself saying the words, but I'm comfortable, which I actually really did. That actually really happened. And someday I'll tell the story, but I actually found myself saying that I'm really comfortable, and not just once, like multiple times. And I do remember saying this to, I was invited to something called a Clarity Weekend. It was just like, I can join in this group. I'm like, what do I need clarity for? I'm good where I am, right? But I went. And little did I know that in 2 weeks after that, something that was not even on my radar would lead me to exactly where all of the discussion in that room for that Clarity Weekend, for that retreat, it would lead me right to where I said that I didn't want to go. And I was like, but I don't want to change. I'm comfortable. And the universe delivered up my catalyst for change 2 weeks later. on July 3rd, the day before Independence Day in the United States. And it was KiKi's Independence Day. And I'm still figuring it out, right? And I think, we all have like little signals. And sometimes if we're comfortable, even if we're not comfortable, sometimes we get comfortable with the way that life is. And we can trust the things, even if they're not perfect. We can trust that things are at least steady. And we appreciate that. It gives us stability. Stability can be extremely sexy. It is to me anyway. I love stability. And yet, do we grow when we're super comfortable, when we're staying in bed, figuratively, when we're all wrapped up and cozy? We're not adventuring. We're not exploring. We're not actively evolving, right? And so, maybe it's those short explorations. I thought I was exploring intellectually enough. It wasn't enough. There had to be a catalyst for change. Anyway, that's enough of my rambling for now. I think that the Things Go Sideways project is evolving. And I'm actually, for every single person who showed up here live, you're all part of it. And I love that. I want us to keep talking. And I will keep pulling stories together and collecting stories. And if you know someone, or you yourself have a particular sideways story you want to share, even if we've spoken before, think about it and talk to me. Think about the role that insight plays after the impasse. When you hit that moment where you knew that things were not going to continue on, where was it that you had that insight that allowed you to create really meaningful change that stuck? Because that's interesting, right? Like, you make a decision, and you made a decision on purpose because of what? Because of what kind of insight? I am curious. I want to hear all of your stories on that. I really don't believe that any single human alive doesn't have to grapple with this. It's just how they handle it, right? It's just how they choose, to move forward. And I think for the people who don't choose, and they let life sort of beat them around and batter them around, like sort of being tossed into the ocean, and it's just like, which way will the waves take me? I feel sorry for them. I feel like it's easy to succumb to that, when you're tired and when things seem like it's one hit after the other. But I do believe that if you can orient yourself, first getting clear about who you are at your core and also who you want to be, you begin to be able to reach out and stabilize so that you can make the next move. And that's the way that you begin to craft that next part, which can be really incredible and fucking scary. It's really scary. Okay. So usually on a walk with your dogs when you make decisions. I like that. Nature, there's all kinds of reasons why that works. In cases sideways, break glass. Yes. Okay. Thank you for being a part of this. I was like, oh, maybe I'll do 30 minutes. Maybe I'll do 15. Maybe I'll make it. Nobody really cares. I'm going to do 10. I'm going to do 10 minutes. But I'm going to try to do more of these lives here and there. I'm still figuring out what kind of content mix is right. In the beginning, I just wanted to make sure that I create a system for these interviews that I'm doing and making sure that they get rolled out on time. I'm releasing once a week. I have finally I got an editor who's doing a really good job on editing the audio podcast so that you might, in these early ones, the sound's not quite as good, but it's better than it was when I was trying to do it at the very beginning. And so the audio editor is doing a really fantastic job. And now as I record, the recordings are better than they were in quality. So the later and later the episodes get, the better and better you're going to see the audio get. Video, of course, the paid subscribers get access to the full length unedited video. I just figured that, that's kind of like you can get the deep cuts in that. I don't know. And I'm also, adding more writing on the Substack as I go along, trying to pull some of the stuff. My sister a long time ago told me that she's not much of a podcast listener, and I get that. And we can't we only have so much time in a day. Sometimes it helps to just see what are the big takeaways. So I've been trying to do that. I've been trying to pull the good stuff from the interviews that someone who is limited on time, maybe Joe's out walking his dogs and trying to make a decision. He thought, I'm going to just look really fast. These are 3 or 5 important things that came out of this interview. It might be the thing that he's looking for. So I'm trying to do that. I am thinking about events. I'm thinking about what are the types of workshops? What are the types of ways that we can look at some of these topics and make change happen? What could we do? What would that look like? Who would be involved? That is definitely something that I'm playing around with in my mind as well. And then, just so you know, on the consulting side of things, I'm trying to figure out how I can apply some of what I'm learning through Things Go Sideways to communication today. I really don't believe that the way that we consume information and receive messaging is the same as it was even 5 years ago. I think that because of who we are as a nation in the United States, I think that because of what's happening with AI and deep fakes and knowing that so much of the communication that we're getting is created through an LLM, I think, and also there's more of a general understanding of how algorithms work too. Not enough of one. Some people still think they can get their news from, TikTok or something, but I think that there's enough of a general understanding at this point that our relationship to how we receive information and messaging is changing and continuing. It's always evolving, but we really need to think about that when we're thinking about how we're communicating on purpose to other people. And I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers to that, because I don't, but I'm exploring it. And I would ask that if you want to explore it with me, then keep tuning in, because that's going along with some of this work too. And maybe that's another conversation we have. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for your support. Thanks for being here. Thanks for asking questions and being curious. And let's strive to continue to do that. I'm always looking for really interesting sideways stories, and I would love to hear from all of you. So thanks. Happy Friday. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend.